Hello, Gemini rising. This is your 2023 astrological 2023 year ahead. So let's get started and getting into the early part of 2023, we're going to look at the most important connections for you this year. And there will be many, but I'm going to look at that which will have the strongest effect for you for a wonderful 2023. So we're going to start off with Mercury. Yes, indeed. Mercury, the communicator, the ruler of Gemini and the third house. And this is all about what you want to say and communicate with the world. So yes, indeed. To start off the year, we've got Mercury in Capricorn, which will be retrograde until January 18th, and then it goes direct in your eighth house. And yes, that is important for you, Gemini, because it's all about depth and your resources, which will have to be kept in check at that time, or you will be very active in making some plans with financial and all sorts of resources, wills, trusts, mortgages, you name it, and really opening up and relating emotionally at that point in time until February 11th. But really, the Mercury in Aquarius and Pisces are most likely going to be at the most important time for you in your chart this year because they are at the top of your chart. And anytime you have planets at the top of your chart, they are a very effective placement and importance in your life. So let's look ahead, and we've got Mercury in Aquarius on February 11th until March 2nd. And it's especially for you, Gemini rising, especially if Mercury hits your personal midheaven in your birth chart. And that's the top of your chart. As mentioned, it's very important because this is the highest goal and aim that you have in mind, or goals and aims. And especially this year, Mercury will be very important in Aquarius because its depositor is Uranus, and that will be remaining in your 12th house for some time, as it has been for a number of years now. And that will be very important to you. Why? Because Uranus is one of the big outer planets, and that has a long-term effect on you and your life. And with it in your 12th house, you will kind of take some more time for downtime, but more than that, you will have to possibly face some personal emotional changes or confrontations. And yes, Uranus, especially during the eclipse times of 2023, as with 2022, are going to be very pivotal for you because it will really deeply connect with your emotions. But getting back to Mercury and Aquarius, with Aquarius, you're going to be communicating with all kinds of new faces, different places. You may want to take up that language that you haven't been. And guess what, Gemini rising, with Mercury, the communicator in your ninth house, it's about communicating with all sorts of people. Yes, indeed. But it's about people from all walks of life. And you're going to be thinking about doing some serious study, even investigation right now, whether you go back to school, whether you are learning more information on the job or what have you. You can't learn enough during that time of Mercury in Aquarius. And with Mercury in Aquarius, Aquarius, especially if it's connected with your midheaven, is all about technology, the future, computers. So right now, you might be thinking about looking into, say, different forms of technology, computers, the internet will have a lot of appeal for you. Thinking about your future And also, Mercury is also very friendly. Maybe you and your best buddies are thinking about taking that ninth house a long distance trip, or because Aquarius is very inventive, you might even think of creating some kind of an invention, Gemini rising, or finishing up on one for that matter this year during Mercury's transit in the sign of Aquarius. And then it will zip into the sign of Pisces, Mercury in Pisces on March the 2nd until March 19th. And during that time, well, Pisces is very dreamy, Gemini rising, and with Mercury in dreamy, imaginative Pisces, this is also going to be a very creative, imaginative time for you. And Pisces is connected with the 12th house. Maybe you will be thinking about, who knows, making a career in music or the arts. And because Pisces is a very mutable sign, and especially connected with your personal midheaven in your birth chart, you may think about having more than one career. Maybe you want to make that hobby that you've had into your career focus, which is very possible. And also with Mercury there, especially once it meets up with Neptune, you may think about becoming very involved with certain charities, whether it's in person with a group or online, signing those petitions, or just really go all out to speak your mind about concerns of charity, sympathies, empathy, and the like. But right now, you are going to be very sweet and very approachable as the public sees you, Gemini rising. And it's a very sensitive time for you to communicate just how versatile you are with your aims and aspirations. Very important time. Indeed. Now we're going to look ahead to the planet of love, Venus. And Venus will be in Aquarius in your ninth house, Gemini rising on January 2nd until January 26th, somewhat like Mercury. It's very appealing. You're going to be thinking of making long distance travel, communicating with many people, education, and so forth, especially appealing on your midheaven. And the same goes with the sign of Pisces, Venus in Pisces. And then on January 26th to February 20th, it's going to be back to focusing on multitasking and being ever so sensitive and appealing to the public with Venus in the sign of Pisces. And remember, it's a mutable sign. You are just thinking about those many different goals and aspirations now, but doing it and appealing to others in such a compassionate, sensitive Pisces style. And hey, who knows, with Venus in there in that 10th house, you may be thinking of a career in something more spiritual or metaphysical that really has great Venus and Pisces appeal to you right now, Gemini rising. Then looking ahead, we've got Mars, the planet of action. Yes, indeed, Gemini rising. And the important placement for you this year, Gemini rising, although rather brief in 2023, unlike 2022, will be Mars. Yes, Mars in Gemini. And that is very important, and especially once it meets up with your Venus point in Gemini. And by the way, that will be from April the 11th until May the 7th. And that's when Venus will be in Gemini, a very attractive, beautiful time for you. By the way, let's not skip over that, Gemini rising, but especially once Venus meets up with Mars, now Mars will then finally, after many months of being retrograde, will go direct in Gemini on January 12th and will only remain there until March 25th. But the latter degrees of Mars in Gemini, especially over your rising sign, Gemini, will be very important because it's finishing up those degrees of Gemini because of many months of its trek through the sign. And now you're going to kind of sort of sense that Mars in Cancer and the connection with your second house and money coming up on March 25th. And boy, it's going to be all about your resources and bringing in the big bucks at the time with Mars once it goes into Cancer, yes, on March 25th. But with Mars and Gemini, it is important because it's about change for you. You have been so communicative, so busy than ever before during the time of 2022, and now with Mars coming to a close, finishing up that later degrees of Gemini, you're going to be zipping up some of those plans that you started in 2022. You are going to very likely focus on some of your travel plans because Mars with Gemini is connected with your third house, and especially with you, Gemini, because you rule that third house of travel. And hey, on a more lighter note, you might be thinking about getting into that vehicle that you've wanted or making repairs, although even though Mars is in your first house, but you are still going to have an abundance of energy. And yes, to reiterate, once Venus meets up with Mars in Gemini, that will be very good. But let's go back to those time frames again with Venus in Gemini and then April 11th to May 7th. So let me make a correction there. Venus will not meet up with your Mars because of the time dates, but nonetheless, Venus with your first house is going to be very appealing during that time, even though it occurs after Mars moves on to your second house. But Mars there, boy, you're going to be finishing up all important work projects, all important communications, and be very busy socially indeed. And I must say, you will have to watch during that time of Mars in Gemini until March the 25th of not getting into any kind of petty, needless conflicts, Gemini rising, because it could make for some uncomfortable moments for you. But then during 2022, you know what that was about because either there were some conflicts or people brought conflict to you, and that could occur again in 2023. However, because it does square off Neptune, you're going to have to watch, especially during the month of March and its later degrees. You will have to also watch for, at the very least, some kind of confusing or uncertain behavior. You may not be sure of what actions to take regarding your career or that new job or so on and so forth. But an extremely busy time frame for you nonetheless, Gemini rising with Mars finishing up in Gemini. And then we've got Mars, the planet of action, in Scorpio until, well, from August 27th until October. I'm sorry, we're going to correct that here. We've got Mars in Scorpio, October 12th until November 24th. We're going to get it together there, yes. And why is that important? Gemini rising, because Mars, let's repeat, goes into Scorpio, October 12th to November 24th. And that is important, Scorpio, even though it's in your sixth house, because why? Kind of similar as I was aforementioned with Uranus in your 12th, because it's going to connect this year with your work and the eclipses, and that will affect your 6th and 12th house communications. And you may be connected with a new job this year, or you are going to be switching careers, but it's going to be a very active time for you, both connected with diet, exercise, your everyday activities, but certainly your communications with work will be very busy. But do keep an eye out on your health and wellness at that time. Then we've got Jupiter. Yes, indeed, Gemini rising in Aries. That will remain there for pretty much half the year until May the 16th, and then it will go into Taurus. Now, Aries, Jupiter, what is that about? Well, it's now in your friend zone. So lately over the last year and now for half of 2023 until May, you may be kind of similar to the Mercury connection and the connection with the ninth house. The 11th house is all about other people. And yes, indeed, Gemini rising, you have noticed and will again this year notice there's many diverse, interesting people coming into your life, but it's more than that. Jupiter and Aries tendencies are to solidify friendships, maybe making your acquaintances into friends, or certainly with Jupiter there, generous and broad-minded Jupiter in your 11th house. This is a time that you might learn some aspects about your friends, because that's what Jupiter is about, connected with Sagittarius, the ninth house, and learning in your 11th house. So not only are you learning much about your friends now and spending more time with them, maybe you'll go on trips with them. It's a very happy-go-lucky placement for Jupiter. But more than that, maybe you and your friends will create something inspirational or very effective together. You may work on projects or other business projects or involvements now, or maybe you and your friends will become very charitable and get involved with all kinds of community activities. Yes, that word again, charities, and so on and so forth. But all kinds of efforts and fun with friends will be very highlighted this year, Gemini rising. But also, what is the 11th house besides friendships, humanity, and so on? It is also a very creative placement, kind of like its opposite house of the 5th house. But it's all about your originality, and similar to anything that's connected with Aquarius, it's a very unique placement right now. So you may really take an interest similar to Aquarius right now, Gemini rising, in technology or anything very futuristic. But nonetheless, it's a very outgoing placement for all your friends, new acquaintances, and communication and creativity of all kinds. Then guess what, Gemini rising? Jupiter will then flip into the sign of Taurus this year. And then once it goes direct in, it will head on to the sign of Taurus May 16th. Then Taurus Jupiter will flip back retrograde on September 5th until December 30th once Jupiter goes direct once more. So let's look at that. Jupiter in Taurus. Now, Jupiter is all about our luck. It's about prosperity, how we bring or attract luck, material, whatever, prosperity to us. And it's our breadth of knowledge because it is connected with the ninth house. So right now, Gemini rising, you may be really taking time for some downtime, and you may be looking into some knowledge connected with spiritual issues, which may move you right now and become very connected with you and your personal belief system. It's also a time that you can do some serious soul searching about whatever, anything that is important to you. There's a whole inner wealth of knowledge and peace of mind, and just feeling an inner harmony this year with Jupiter in Taurus. And that's also important because especially during the time that Jupiter connects up with unexpected Uranus. Now, during the times that there are some square off with the other planets in your birth chart, it could be some emotionally upsetting or conflicting time for you, and where things are good one day and they're a little bit iffy the next day, or from week to week, month to month, what have you. But Uranus and Jupiter can be good too, because you may have sudden flashes of psychic or intuitive insights now. And this is also a good time with Jupiter and Uranus, both kind of connected with the psychical, to get involved with astrology, yes, the metaphysical, or anything that also is involved with healing. So right now you may want to heal emotionally, mentally, and you may look into all forms of healing, whether they be conventional, whether it be, hey, something to do with counseling or holistic, you name it. This is the time with Jupiter in Taurus, and especially once it meets up with Uranus. But yes, do be careful and be very watchful of some of those ups and downs during particular times during 2023. And just always, as with anything with Uranus, expect the unexpected, Gemini rising. Then we're going to look to Saturn, and Saturn is going to be in the sign of Aquarius, continuing on briefly during this year of 2023, and it will remain there until March the 7th, and then it will head on to Pisces, retrograde in Pisces on June 17th until November 4th, when Saturn will go direct. And why is this important to you? Because Saturn is now making a change over this year. It is in Aquarius, which is very idealistic, and perhaps during this time with Saturn in Aquarius, it's been, especially in your personal birth chart, Gemini rising, it may be on your midheaven, the top half of your chart. So you've been probably very involved with anything with, yes, new faces, new places, possibly involved with picking up new languages, connecting with new cultures, long distance travel, and so on. But now Saturn in Aquarius is finishing up its last degree, so it's going to be very humane, and you are going to certainly connect with all those interests. But now with Saturn in Aquarius, you're going to be finishing up on some study, or really getting very seriously involved with your career, much more on a daily level. And of course, with Aquarius, you've probably had some inventive, creative ideas, and it's a very good placement for really putting yourself out there for your work, hard work, and changing up your career a little bit. And it's a very appealing place. Saturn in Aquarius on your midheaven. You are just so humane, so friendly to everyone. But now we've got Saturn in the planet of Pisces. Yes, indeed, starting on March the 7th. And Saturn is also in your career zone. And so, like Saturn in Aquarius with your midheaven, you may feel like this is the time for hard work. Yes, Saturn, even in the sweet and sensitive sign of Pisces, is all about really putting the pedal to the metal now, Gemini rising. And because it is a mutable sign, you equally, again, especially if Saturn is on your midheaven, Gemini rising, may think about having varied Gemini, or I should say, well, Gemini is a mutable sign like you with the mutable sign of Pisces. So you both have that need for variety. And with the Pisces Saturn, yes, this is the time you're going to think about taking seriously more than just one career, or taking seriously your sympathies for other people. And you may be very charitable right now, especially because Saturn takes charity very seriously, and you are just opening up your heart and your hearth to other people. You may also develop during this 2.5-year reign of Saturn in Pisces, you may develop interest, yes, in spiritual issues. You take it very seriously right now, Gemini rising, or issues regarding that which is about the mysteries and the unknown. But nonetheless, with Saturn there, it's all about getting your career off the ground, and you are going to have your hands in so many career aims and interests. I'm doing it with such a sweet, sympathetic, compassionate outlook, and so appealing. Yes, Gemini rising with Saturn on your 10th house. Then we've got Neptune in Pisces. Now, Neptune in Pisces and Saturn in Pisces will not meet together this year because they are in very different degrees. Neptune will be in the latter degrees. Saturn will be in the early degrees. But nonetheless, with Neptune there in your 10th house, Gemini rising, you have had, in particular, somewhat like Saturn, that will remain there or go forward into 2023. You've had a lot of sympathies for causes that really are of utmost importance to you. Maybe you've been signing a lot of those petitions, Gemini rising, for human or animal rights, and that will continue on, especially dominating 2023 with the early degrees of Saturn in Pisces. And it's also a time you may find, like 2023 with Saturn, but especially in the highest with Neptune, you may find you are moved by a career in arts, whether it's art, music, beauty, because Neptune in Pisces is at its highest and most inspirational, enlightened, and creative. So yes, certainly you may pursue all those areas again this year, Gemini rising. Then we've got Pluto in Capricorn, the powerhouse, and it has been in your 8th house for quite some time, and that's been all about depth, maybe a lot over the last years with Pluto in the sign of Capricorn. You've had to deal with beginnings and endings, closing the book on much in your life over these many years of Pluto in Capricorn in your 8th house, Gemini rising. But now we've got Pluto entering the sign of Aquarius, and that will head on to Aquarius on March 23rd. So it will also head back retrograde into Capricorn, and that will be the sign of Pluto the planet of Pluto in Capricorn will remain there until March 23rd, and then May 1st, yes, it will go back into the sign of Capricorn. So on March 23rd into Aquarius, then on May the 1st, it flips back retrograde into the sign of Capricorn for the remainder of the year. So yes, you may be starting things, you may be finishing whatever in your life right now. It's all about beginnings and endings, but especially it's about depth and opening up to people, continuing that deep connection with Pluto in your 8th house. But equally, Pluto can be rather upsetting as well. But with Pluto there, it's all about what? Gemini rising transformation. So over these many years with Pluto and Capricorn, you've made some very serious transformations and changes in your life. Also, it deals with wills, trusts, and this is something else that you've been dealing with and may deal with again with Pluto in Capricorn in your 8th house, and it will remain there pretty much all year. And again, especially depending on your birth chart, it will remain in your 8th house. Whole sign Pluto, once it goes into Aquarius, very briefly for about just over a month, will go into your 9th house. But nonetheless, with the latter degrees, it's all about what? It's all about looking forward to really sharing and becoming very deeply moved and maybe removed from some of the, say, charities or sympathies that you've had now. Maybe you felt very deeply connected with your loved ones at this time. And maybe, yes, indeed, you've had to remove yourself from some of your loved ones because it has been rather upsetting with you, or it's been deeply moving for you. And it's been quite a trek with Pluto and Capricorn. But now with the later degrees, and once it steps into the sign of Aquarius, it's going to be all about your goals or your sense of depth connected with what? Your humanity, because that's what Aquarius is about, and no exception with Pluto in Aquarius. And Aquarius is all about not just our humanity, it's our friendships. And right now, once Pluto goes into Aquarius, and especially in 2024 for many years to come, you are going to feel very deep about your friendships and may either one of two things with Pluto: decide that you want to move on from very important friendships, or you may have very deep meaningful connections with your friends and your charities. But nonetheless, with Pluto remaining between Capricorn and Aquarius, it's a very transformative and changing time for you in 2023. Then we're going to move on to the eclipses for 2023, which there are 4. And to start off, we've got the first one on April 20th at 29 critical Aries in your 11th house. So we're back to that friendship theme, but in this case we've got a solar eclipse and new moon. So right now you might be meeting some new friends there now, Gemini rising, maybe right not on the date of the eclipse, but for the next 6 months after, between the new moons and the full moons with Aries and Libra. So this is a time that your friends will really benefit you emotionally right now, especially with a new moon and solar eclipse. But it's a very critical time. So you could also put your energies not into just your friends, but you are going to be putting a lot of your energies into your dreams, your aspirations, really kind of putting together something that of importance for you. Maybe it is that important invention, 11th house, or it is connected with something of high creative importance that you really want to put out there into the world. And it's a time that you may be needed for a friend, or for whatever reason you bring in new friends or friends need you. Now let's look ahead. We've got the lunar eclipse, or the full moon, on May 5th. That will be at 14 degrees of Scorpio. We're back to the 6th house, which is connected with health and wellness, and it is a full moon. Yes, indeed, Gemini rising and in the sign of Scorpio. So do be cautious of your health, your wellness now. And it's also connected with pets. Yes, animals. So you may have a concern or a deep connection with an animal friend of yours, but it's also connected with the mundane. Your daily life is really going to be picking up now, but with Uranus still in the 12th house, you will have to be cautious right before, or especially in the months after this lunar eclipse, Gemini rising, of conflicts. And that may be conflicts to others that you work with or within yourself. Maybe you're wanting to make a change right now, and you are, because eclipses, especially lunar eclipses, full moons, are connected with endings. Maybe you want to change up to different jobs or careers right now, but it's going to be a very pivotal time for you with work matters, with that lunar eclipse in Scorpio. Now we then have another solar eclipse. Oh, and this is really fun now. Gemini rising in Libra at 14 degrees, and Libra is connected with your 5th house. So this is going to be all about fun, and it's going to be all about maybe connecting with your kids and grandkids, or there's going to be news of such coming up for you at the end of 2023. And for all you unavailable Gemini risings right now, it's going to make you especially very attractive right now, and you may bring some new suitors into your life, or certainly some new friends that are going to be very fun loving, and maybe you will take that vacation of a lifetime, or hey, do some gambling and see some fine winnings on that front. Then we finally have the lunar eclipse on October 28th. Yes, and that will be at 5 degrees Taurus in your whole sign, 12th house. And because it is a lunar eclipse, but now in Taurus, and it is connecting with Uranus later on as this eclipse culminates, yes, you will have to be careful, Gemini rising, of not getting too emotionally upset, especially we've got that axis with Scorpio's 6th house and the 12th house right now. Or you may want to go within and really do some serious soul searching, because you are making changes right now with Uranus there, possibly some unexpected change. But with Uranus and even this lunar eclipse, it's a good time to add new air to your life. Make some of those changes that really kind of awaken you emotionally with this lunar eclipse in the sign of Taurus. But do be careful. Don't be too hard on yourself, Gemini rising, with this lunar eclipse in your 12th house. Just kind of take a light touch, and whatever transpires now in the months thereafter into 2024, you want to develop a positive outlook and really just go with the flow in all emotional concerns. Now, to finish up here, yes, Gemini rising, you indeed will have a memorable 2023. Yes, you're going to have some planets change over this year, namely Jupiter and Pluto, but nonetheless, it is a time for change. That's what 2023's year is going to be about with you, and especially once Mars then changes out of Gemini into Cancer. So many changes in your life, many awakenings, many people, faces, and places, and that's the theme. And it's going to be continuing all about your love and your humanity for other people. And indeed, all your sympathies and compassion for the year 2023 is what you will treasure. And for you, Gemini rising, will be the utmost importance. And best of luck, Gemini rising, for 2023.